Thank you for joining us. Another episode of the Corporate Cowboys podcast on Saturday, December 21st, 2022. My name is Alex. I'll be your host. For the next 30 minutes, I'll treat this as a consult. It'll be free. You don't have to pay for anything. You want to visit us? Do so on Instagram. That's at Corporate Cowboys with the Z at the end. On Patreon, you can find us. It's the Corporate Cowboys Podcast. If you want to shoot us a little money, support us in the corporate war. It goes towards office supplies, business expenses, legal fees, that sort of thing. Things of that nature, do so. There's a Cash App, there's a Venmo, it's all floating around out there. Now, today's question. Today's question is coming to us from r/CareerGuidance. Essentially, it's asking, how do I ask about work/life balance without it being a red flag? Now, right off the bat, just off top, I can see why asking about work-life balance might appear negatively to a hiring manager because it's like the employee asking, what is the minimum I have to do to not get fired? Right? Now, as a hiring manager personally, I have to understand that everybody I hire, all my interviewees, are human. And humans have a physical capacity, a physical limit, right? To the amount of time, to the amount of energy and or money that they can invest into the job that doesn't take away from other areas of their life. We're humans after all. We're all on this mission of what is it? Self actualization, the very peak of Maslow's hierarchy, right? And if you don't know what that is, Google it. Mazlow. I think it's the hierarchy or the pyramid. The very top of individual development is actualization, making the most of your potential, right? Now, I can't ask for every single bit of a person's potential to be invested in what I'm doing, right? If I want partners, I don't always want a subordinate, right? And the subordinate will subordinate their own personal interests for the interests of somebody or something else. You don't always want subordinates, right? People you can delegate tasks and duties and obligations to. You can have them as partners. As partners, you ought to be able to invest an equal amount, a proportionate amount. Maybe not equal, not exactly 50-50, but the outcomes should have a semblance of a contribution from all of those involved, right? Regardless of position, of me being a manager, they should see my signature on it. You being an associate, being a subordinate, being in a support role, being a partner, also having your signature on it as if you have been there. Alex was here and you were there as well to make the final product come into existence, for the service to be able to be given to a client. I haven't even read the body. So this person is trying to elicit some advice, and they're saying, I'm in the final stages of the interview process. Oh, so they don't even have the job yet. I'm in the final stages of the interview process with a small startup for a leadership position. While I understand this will be a demanding job, I want to clarify just what is expected in terms of hours a day slash week, etc. I have three small kids, and I don't want to bite off more than I can chew. But I don't want to turn off the hiring manager by looking like I'm not willing to give a little extra, which I am. They put that in parentheses, which I am. Wait, they are trying to turn off the manager, or they can give a little extra, which I am. Yeah. What's the best way to approach this? They say. What's the best way to approach this? So they're in the final stages of interviewing. And at this point, an interviewer is probably coming to terms with who you are as a person, as a professional, right? That they can onboard, that they can onboard and train, orient to this this startup's systems and procedures. Now you're in a leadership position for a startup. I think you ought to evaluate, assess those duties, those obligations, those tasks that you will have to satisfy as a leader in a startup. I wouldn't just come out the gate and ask, "Hey, so what's work-life balance like here?" Because they're a startup. They don't. It would be rare. It would be a very special startup if they had already had the culture established, right? What the work life is like. Because it might be that it's very relaxed. It might not be very relaxed. That might be up to you to inform what the work environment is like. But because you're being hired to do a job, it's up to you. It is up to you to inform yourself what the job requires from you as a leader. I mean, if you've served in a leadership capacity before, you ought to know how to manage people, how to manage products, how to manage other resources. You should have some of these systems and procedures, maybe a template of sorts to use while you are in this position. And if you don't, you better get cracking on learning because it is going to be indispensable that you know how to do this, regardless of how demanding. It may not be demanding at all, but you still have a leadership position, a leadership role to be steering, to be operating. So you ought to take advantage of this opportunity and find out from them exactly what these duties are, how to best satisfy them, how much discretion you have, how much control over your own work do you have, how much control over other people's work do you have, how much responsibility, what level of accountability to the public, not just to your own manager, not just to whoever hired you, but to the public. Whether or not your position is public facing, if you have to be inter- interacting with members and entities in the public, business to consumer, what have you, because that will all dictate how much responsibility you can expect. I mean, if you become the face, you're in a leadership position. So if they put you out there as a face for this small startup, expect phone calls after hours. I mean, if they hire you on hourly, let's say, then I mean, you've got space to negotiate how much you get paid per hour and whether or not you're going to be on call after hours and what that looks like. I mean, there are so many ways to negotiate proper compensation, appropriate, something that is appropriate for your position. Unless if your salary and have already negotiated, have already addressed that during interviews, then your salary, expect some phone calls. Expect some phone calls. This is a small startup, so you could expect, depending on the industry that you're in, the locality, the region that it serves, whether or not you could expect whether or not you could be receiving calls after hours when you're trying to play with your kids, right? You have three kids to tend to. As far as letting the hiring manager know, I mean, if they didn't already know that you have a family, I mean, you can let them know you have a family. I probably wouldn't go into specifics, into details about, I don't know, how many wives, how many kids you got, how many spouses previously divorced. I mean, I wouldn't go into all of that. If you have outside obligations, find a way to address these outside obligations in conjunction with what your tasks and duties are as a leader for this small startup. Definitely ask that. That's the only way you'll know. That's the only way you will find out what to expect on your first day, on your first week, during your first month, after your first year, right? The direction that the company can take you, the direction you can take the company as a leader, all that. Now, we don't know, for context, we don't know what industry they're in. We don't know what experience they have. We, you see, these are all questions that are probably assumed from when they applied or if they were recruited. I'm talking about the interviewee, the OP. These are all considerations that the OP must have taken into account when applying, when researching, or when they got recruited. Otherwise, they wouldn't be interviewing, right? I mean, you ought to know what organization, what entity you have applied for in order to interview. I feel like it's basic. It's basic knowledge. It's basic knowledge to do a little bit of research on who is interviewing you so that the interview isn't stale. It could be a two-way interview. Interview one another to find if you are a good fit to work together. Yeah, especially being in a leadership position, I feel like it necessitates, it warrants a different level of professionalism, a different level of skill, a different level of knowledge, because you're leading. You're leading people, you're leading an organization, you're necessarily representing both of them, the people and the organization. So if you're worried about commitment, about time and energy, and where that's going after hours, I believe, I think, as a corporate cowboy, it's probably a good idea to ask about those commitments, to ask about their expectations in conjunction with your expectations of this position, what you expect to gain from it, what they expect to gain from you, so that you are equally valuable to one another. I don't know how folks get this idea in their mind that they can't negotiate. You could always everything is negotiable. I mean, most everything. Death is not. Life is, death is not. But you want to know the terms under which you will be employed. You want to know the terms for which you are interviewing. And these you want to learn early on. You don't want to start your first day and be like, hey, I have to leave at what, two or 3 or 4 to go pick up my kids from school. I mean, what the fuck? This is a startup. We put you in a leadership position for a reason. We thought we saw leadership qualities. And if what you do is fumble the bag day one, you're fucking up. You're fucking up. Now you can put them on notice by letting them know you have outside family obligations. I mean, if they start trying to rope you in with like this is one big family, we all work hard, play hard type of bullshit, let them know you already work hard and you already play hard. You have a family to do that with. Don't let them fuck with you. You're going to be in a leadership position, so why should they be running game on you, right? Come on. Think professionally. Snap out of it. Snap out of it. Think professionally. Take a little sip of water. I think that's going to be the best way. Well, my opinion, I suppose, right? Take it all with a grain of salt. None of this is legal. None of this is legal advice. It is just a professional opinion. You want to address that job description, exactly what it is you'll be tasked with doing, the reason for which you're even interviewing, why you will be hired. You want to address that in the interview. Shit, even write it down if you have to. It ought to be in writing. It ought to be in writing. It's something that you should be able to sign, what they expect from you, what the expected outcomes of employing you will be. So something you could sign and you could hold yourself to because it's something you're promising. It's something that you're exchanging for money or resources or opportunities or network. I don't know what the compensation looks like there. I'm assuming there's some money, there's some benefits, a company car, who the fuck knows, right? But it'll be an exchange for what's expected of you in return. And that is your professional service, your leadership. Don't fuck around. Don't fuck around thinking that you could half-ass one thing to tend to another. You'll end up half-assing them both. There is a way to distribute your time, your energy in the most efficacious manner so you're not dropping the ball in any one category. But it requires communicating. It requires communicating this intent, this intention with your hiring manager. And the earliest you could do that is in the interview process. When you're interviewing, you want to walk in with this plan. If you don't already know what the job description is, or if the job description is really vague, I don't know where it's posted online, fucking Craigslist. I don't know. You want to address it exactly exactly what the expectations from both sides are before signing. Don't just fucking sign blindly and then come to to Reddit and ask, hey, how do I get the best work-life balance out of this shitty contract that I signed for? If you need help with that, reach out to us. You can write. Snail mail is still fine. If you need a response, give us a little time. Plan accordingly. It's P.O. Box 3372, Rancho Cordova, California, 95741. It'll be forwarded to us. Give us a little time. We could set something up if you'd like. Maybe not in person. That's a little expensive. I mean, our rates are reasonable, but if you want us to travel, just letting you know up front, you're paying the costs. Folks we take on as clients get another set of eyes, another set of ears, another brain. They get a professional opinion. What they do is they get motivation. I'm not going to say we incentivize, but the point of this podcast, besides it being just cathartic therapy, I guess, from living this corporate lifestyle, this corporate war for corporate cowboys, is to produce other corporate cowboys, to incorporate associates. It's associates incorporating associates. This shit, I'm not going to say it's circular, but it spirals out. It definitely spirals out, but it starts on the inside. And if you need help identifying what your assets are, personal or professional, you need help identifying your position relative to this place you're interviewing with, to this person you're interviewing for. If you need help doing that, if you need the assistance, we can provide it. We can provide it. Granted that ours is going to be a plan a little more aggressive for some clients. Some clients do want that. And if you come to corporate cowboys, the presumption is that you have aggressiveness in mind. You require assertiveness. You're coming to us because you need that assertive lens. See how I stopped saying aggressive? That assertive lens to continuously develop yourself, regardless of whether or not you're interviewing for a job and you're new, you're brand spanking new. This is a startup. This is a small startup, so they're brand spanking new too. This is an opportunity for you to inform what the corporate culture is. I mentioned that in the beginning. They haven't even established it. Unless, and I said it would be rare. It would be really rare that they establish it in the beginning without any track record and telling you what their expectations are. They might have a good job description, but it's up to you to carve out those expectations and do that during the interview process. I don't think there's anything wrong with finding work-life balance, but asking about work-life balance, it comes off as if you have no control over your personal life, as if you lack professionalism, as if you have no boundaries and you cannot set them yourself. Everybody's got boundaries. If you're scared to assert to your boundaries, I don't know, causes me to question whether you're a professional who's more the subordinate type. And I'm not judging. I'm not putting you in a negative light. Everybody needs a support role. Everyone needs a subordinate. And for some, maybe if you have kids, maybe if you have mouths, quote unquote, mouths to feed, they're in search of stability. They don't want to be too assertive. They don't want to be rocking the boat too hard out of fear that they might be let go, that they won't get paid, that they'll be penalized. But you're interviewing for this leadership position. And so the hiring manager is going to look to you to lead. It's best that you lead off as informed as possible. So yeah, the recommendation here is to ask. Simply ask and plot accordingly. Let's take a look at some of these comments here. The first comment says startup culture, quote unquote, startup culture and work-life balance are rarely used in the same sentence. Yeah, I kind of did touch on that. I addressed it. I mean, if it's a startup, the culture hasn't even been established yet. So there isn't something that's continuous that you can look back to and say, we've always done it this way, because they haven't done shit yet. It's up to you to inform that. It might be up to you to inform that. Maybe they'll hand you I was gonna say some type of symbolic item, but maybe they hand you the pencil. There you go. Maybe they hand you the pencil and it's your turn to hire for positions that are needed. They put you in a leadership position. Maybe it's up to you to hire subordinates, to hire employees. So you will be in a position to inform the culture. You want to make it the best possible. You want to create the ultimate goal is to create better business. And as a corporate cowboy, it's what we should be striving for always. They say startup culture and work life balance are rarely used in the same sentence. It's more like, quote unquote, we all work hard here. Quote unquote, everyone here wears multiple hats. Quote unquote, work hard to play hard. Yeah, yeah, I would agree. Everyone here wearing multiple hats, that's really just startup code for expect, and this is why I touched on you finding out what your duties, what your tasks, what your obligations, what they expect from you is, right? With their expectations. You setting those bounds on expectations, because if everyone is required to wear multiple hats, then you may be out you may be required to do things that are outside of your reach, outside of what you agree to for the sake of quote unquote the startup, right? There's another level of investment which borders on sacrifice if it's a startup, if it's a struggling startup, a sputtering startup. I'm not going to say it's a failing startup. I mean, if it's a failing startup, leaders might be required to make sacrifices left and right. Owners, oh, for sure, unless they're fucking bailing ship at the first sign of trouble. But leadership may be required to make additional sacrifices for the good of the organization. Whether or not you can hack this, whether or not you can stomach making these sacrifices when you have mouths to feed at home. That's a personal decision. If you need additional analysis on that, because I don't know what life at home looks like. I don't know how well off you are with the security, how secure you are in your livelihood. Again, you need help with that, reach out to us. We're more than happy to give you an accounting on your fucking life, on your career, so you might be more informed on what moves to make professionally. Okay? Find us on Instagram. Find us on Patreon. So they say here, just ask. Yeah, just ask. And they give questions. What will be expected of me as far as office hours go? That still kind of borders on what's the minimum amount of work I have to do? What will be expected of me as far as office hours go? No, you should already know what office hours are like. That's why you walk in and you ask what the duties and obligations are. How many days will I be required to be on site? Okay, maybe it's because these questions sound like something an entry level employee would be asking. In a leadership position, you have a little bit more freedom, a little bit more discretion to ask the probing questions, which is why I said take the job description and pretty much tear it apart with questions. Those are the questions you ought to be asking so that they know what they're contracting you for and you know what the fuck you're signing on for. What you're signing on to? What you're signing on to, I guess. Signing on for, signing on to. Yes, the ship you are signing on to. Ship. Don't let it sink. You could say, how would you describe the culture? Yeah, no, these are questions for an entry-level employee when the startup has already been in operation for some time. But you're the leader. You're going to be a leader. The culture starts with you. And they say these Those few questions will get you far. Make sure to read between the lines. Yes, read between the lines and ask fucking questions. Maybe you should be asking the between the line questions, not these questions directly. How many hours a week? Dog, it's like asking how many hours a week will I be scheduled, essentially. And if it's 40 hours, if they tell you 40 hours, you might not even be considered a leader. If they hear you ask that, they might move you down a peg or two with their answer. In their mind, put yourself in the interviewing manager's mind and the hiring manager's mind. An interviewee asks, how many hours will I be expected to be in the office? And they hire you for a leadership position. That means that they're gambling on you to come through and lead. Otherwise, they would have just said, oh, you'll be a manager. You'll be in this position. You report to us. People report to you. And this is exactly what we want. But being a leader means you'll be an organizational leader. It might only be one department, one division, one team for one product, but you're a leader nonetheless. You want to ask specifically what the duties are. Forget how much time they want from you. How much time can you give to a startup? Right? You already have 3 kids. Do it for the kids. Do it for the kids. You want to hustle this startup so you could turn around and hustle the public. Lead the startup. You want the startup to be successful, right? You want job security. If you wanted job security, you wouldn't be going to a startup with 3 kids. Fucking apply to one that's already been established, one that you could predict, something that might be routine. I'm not gonna say go gov, but or go public, right? Public sector. But interviewing someone to work at a startup, you want to set those bounds and those expectations on early so that later on down the line, nobody regrets making their respective decisions for having interviewed you, for having hired you on, or for you having agreed to work there. At a startup, you got to put in the fucking work, man. I wish we had more information, more context. And if this were a real life client, we would be asking at least 10, 15 questions to really pin down the tactical position they are in relation to the organization, in relation to the other managers, where in the hierarchy they are, who will be reporting to them as a quote unquote leader. See, there's just a lot of things we don't know yet, a lot of things that aren't clear. I would say are not clear enough for this client to say outright that they are a fit for the startup. They might believe like, oh, the startup needs me, but they haven't been issued a reality check that they are not a good fit for the startup. See, we don't know that yet. But if we had more information, we could give the client some perspective. We could make recommendations to the clients as to what questions to ask that will better inform their decision. If you are in a position like this, if life has you in a position like this, you're concerned, you would like to know the next move to make, reach out to us. That's what we're here for. We're here to help. Have yourselves a great New Year's Eve, productive if you're working, relaxing if you're not. I mean, You should always be a little productive and have fun doing it. I mean, that's the relaxing part, is it not? Take care, man. I'll catch you. I'll catch you next year, fucking.